Good morning. Welcome to Accuracy in America. So I was going to say from now on, this is episode 183 of this version. Brian and I have been doing this for a while, but welcome everyone. I'm Don Irvine, and my co-host forever and ever has been Brian McNichol.
Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, and those dog-faced pony soldiers.
That's right. I keep thinking in the back of my mind, it's like, I wish I had a way of counting how many times we've actually done these programs, but when we had when we had the ones that we're doing on like that right-wing news Facebook page, that whole page got wiped out, for whatever, Facebook, Facebook wiped the whole thing out. So I have no records. all those great things we said, are, been just erased. I guess, I don't know. I guess that doesn't qualify as, what's that, the website thing, the Wayback Machine probably doesn't capture all the Facebook stuff that's been taken down.
That'd be interesting. I was thinking about that when you were talking about it. I don't know,
Somebody should have started that beforehand,
There's some good stuff there, man.
There's a lot of stuff. I mean, not just us, but there's a lot of stuff that's been wiped out because of complaints or whatever and accusations and on both sides of the aisle. So anyway, here we are. Did you get any wet stuff or snowy stuff this morning?
I did not. I've been kind of watching it pretty closely, and I didn't see anything. Did you?
Yeah. Nope. It's a non-event over here where I live. So maybe in other parts, but I thought, well, we'll see what happens. But I was a little skeptical, and I say this all the time. As I get older, I want to see less of that, at least in significant accumulations, because I don't want to be cleaning my driveway and sidewalk.
I hear you.
If I have,
that's dangerous stuff. People die.
I'm not a spring chicken anymore. It's like I even had a guy, somebody I knew that I'm on his email list and been there forever, and he does landscaping, and so that means they turn to snow removal and stuff like that in the fall. And he said, this is the price of this type of driveway. 2-car driveway is like $120 or whatever it is. Larger driveway, I mean, would be more. So I'm thinking so my driveway would probably be at least $200. I was like, yowza.
Wow.
I'm like, no, I'm going to still risk it a little bit, but maybe
make sure it snows.
Yeah, maybe at that price, I will invest in a snow thrower or something at that point.
There you go.
And, take the strain off. I mean, I did, I've been saying on Facebook, I did get a leaf blower, and so I haven't actually raked a leaf this year. I've just been blowing them all over the place. And
that looks like fun.
It can be. Actually, it's like a little toy. The only thing with this particular version, I mean, it's a pretty powerful darn thing, but the battery is big and heavy. So you carry it around for like 15 minutes or 20 minutes. It's like, man, it just feels like a ton of bricks, and because they're batteries, they only last for a certain length of time. So I have 2 of them that came with this because I got it via Costco. So I have to stop, go in, and go. I have to stop, go, and switch out the battery, and then start recharging the other one, and things like that. But you kind of know you kind of know my house and my yard. Yeah. There's just a ton of the trees in the back. There's a ton of leaves, and I really hate it. I really hate those trees at this point in time. But anyway, and I don't have any kids to jump in any leaf piles.
So. No, I hear you. That's half the fun.
That's right. All right. Omicron, whatever people want to say. I mean, there's a debate about how you're supposed to pronounce this thing anyway, or as President Biden often says, Omicron. He likes to throw in an extra letter in there because he doesn't know what the heck is going on.
You're president, you can just call it whatever you want, right?
That's right.
He owns it, right? It's his.
So that's right. So, has this thing been was this overblown, this whole thing we saw about a week or so ago? And what's going on?
It was presented to us as like Shazam, South Africa has just discovered this new mutation, right? And the South Africans have known about this for a long time. The reason they didn't say anything about it is because no one's really gotten sick, right? Nobody's been hospitalized, nobody's died. So they don't know, I mean, that's why they weren't all that alarmed about it. They've had some, there's some strange stuff about it. Like, for one, the symptoms are it's sort of like, there's you're weak a little bit, you sort of feel sickish, but it's weird. Like people say, I feel weird. I feel in a way I've never felt before. And when I had COVID, I felt like I was sick in a way I had never been sick before. And I don't know how much of it is psychosomatic, right? You hear that this is different, and so your body deals you that information. But it felt like something was happening to me that had never happened before. And they say that it's heavy on the weirdness and light on the true like sickness, disease implications, which means a lot of stuff. One is this could be the ticket out of it. If this is the variant, if we don't try to suppress this variant, if we don't try to like design a vax to make it go away, right? If we just let it happen, everyone gets immunity, right? Everyone, vaxxed or not vaxxed, gets actual immunity, and we move on. It's all pretty mild, right? You're not going to have overwhelmed hospitals and overwhelmed morgues and stuff, because it doesn't appear to be that serious in terms of sickness. Now, we don't know about long term. We don't know about long term of any of this stuff because it hasn't been a long term, right? But generally viruses, your body develops a defense, it gets rid of it, and you move on. And if that's the case, Omicron is the ticket out. Now, the geniuses who are running public health in this country, they don't see it that way, right? They're like, oh, we need, a new vax formulation to deal with this. And we're going to need everybody who's had a vax, no matter how many vaxes you've had, get back in line and get you one for this, because otherwise this thing will spread. Who cares if it spreads? The other interesting thing about it is there are some people out there saying that it came to us from animals, right? So in other words, we've given the animals COVID. It's mutated in the animals. The animals gave us this back, right? Gain of function, right? So in that case, that gives you the choice of, kill every animal, which I don't think is productive, or, come to the conclusion that we should have come to a long time ago, that this is endemic, and stop treating it as a big crisis and just start looking at mitigating it, because that's what's going on. I mean, that's where we're headed, whether, Joe Biden or the Democrats or Boris Johnson or whoever likes it or not. Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as you say, who cares about it? I mean, both of you and I know who cares about it are the liberal types, the people who kind of want to keep suppressing our freedoms in a lot of ways.
Right.
They care about it because, it's another, something they can use to say, okay, we need to have these vaccine mandates. We need to have these lockdowns. We need to put everybody's got to put their masks back on, indoors and in public spaces and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, so a week ago or thereabouts, what we had was, well, I guess this happened the Friday after Thanksgiving when everything kind of started to happen. So then the stock market had a big reaction for several days into the negative side of things. The market has now more or less recovered all of that since then. The last few days have been pretty good as they've kind of looked around and said, well, so far we're just not seeing a lot of bad news out of this. I mean, right. The market always reacts on fear, and the fear gripped them because they thought, oh my gosh, here we go with lockdowns, travel industry is going to get decimated again. And yet, people's reaction so far has been, at least people I know, has been relatively muted. I mean, I don't hear a lot from people saying, oh my gosh, we got to worry about all this stuff again, which is good. But it does, as I said, it does give these governments a chance to say, well, that's why we're going to extend this. I mean, what did Biden do? He extended the airplane mask mandate for another 2 months, right? No evidence that this was going to be a long-term problem, but it was an excuse for him to add another 60 days or whatever he did to it. So it's like, I don't, on the airline thing, I'm not sure where we're going to see, the light at the end of the tunnel for that, because it just seems like every single little thing, if we find the next variant will push us to May. They're just going to keep pushing that. They want that. They want to do that. And things like that. So that bothers me a whole heck of a lot about this. But
remember, with them, the coercion is the point, right? The thing they're trying to achieve is we're going to lock in a level of coercion and win acceptance of it in the name of saving us from the deadly disease, and that we're never going to relinquish. So we talked about this when this first started. We said, these are people who are not used to, they have no record of ever relinquishing power in any way once they get it. So it'll be interesting to see if these guys can actually say, okay, we're no longer going to have that power over you. We're going to give that back to you, because they're not wired for that. And you see that happen. They're just trying to hold on to that power, right? And it's increasingly untenable.
Yeah, and I see. I mean, as far as I can tell, I mean, the overall general reaction, because if you can look at sporting events and things like that, a lot of stuff that is indoors at this point in time of the year and things like that, I don't hear of anything where people are just like they're scared to go to a basketball game or whatever at this point in time, right? I mean, people want their lives back. They want the normalcy they had back, in 2019. And, and they just had enough with all this government intrusion into their lives. And it's like, you can go ahead and make the choice yourself. I did see something, I think, and I'm not clear about it, that the Maryland, I guess their school board, they said they're going to leave it up to local jurisdictions to determine the mask mandate. I think they set a few parameters in terms of how many people have been vaccinated or something like that as part of the metric and everything like that. But at least I thought, okay, it's not what I'd like to see overall, but it's a step in the right direction of giving us something back, making us feel a little bit more like, we just don't live in some dictatorship or some third world country or something like this at this point. So
when I read that, I was like, okay, I'm trying to picture the Maryland jurisdiction that's going to roll back the mask mandate. Which one, who's out there? I guess, Garrett County.
I see potentially right. Western Maryland and maybe the Eastern Shore, Southern Maryland.
Eastern Shore, down around Ocean City. That's pretty Republican area, actually.
But as soon as if you're talking about Baltimore, Prince George's, and Montgomery County, not going to happen.
Anne
Arundel is going to be a little bit iffy. I attended an event this past week with former Maryland Governor Bob Ehrlich, and he was talking about things. It was interesting because he lives here. He lives in Maryland. I mean, he's doing very well in private practice and everything like that. He's just finished his 5th book. He says he's a Trump supporter, but not a Trump acolyte necessarily. But he was talking about this. He held a Republican seat in Anne Arundel in Congress. He says that's Anne Arundel is not like that anymore. It's very difficult for a Republican to win in Anne Arundel County, for Congress, running for that seat now. And the shift is there. You see pockets of it. I mean, Anne Arundel's been better on something. So, as far as I know, there isn't a mask mandate, indoor mask mandate in Anne Arundel. But if you go to PG County, yes, because I did that whole church loop thingy, and Montgomery County, PG County, and then Anne Arundel, mask, no mask. It's like, where do I like to be right now? Where there's no mask, let me choose. Don't force it down my throat.
Right.
Because it's not what's it doing? It's not
right.
It's not,
See, to me, that's the key thing. The support is eroding and headed toward collapsing because people can't link this to success, right? You said, hey, we all take a vax, it'll be fine. Took a vax, more cases this year than last year, right? Not to mention the side effects and all-cause mortality and all those other things. It's more cases. It's not, you didn't make the problem better, you made it worse. And, and the same with the mask. There's no evidence that masks deter spread of the disease. They're just not. It's like, if you're worried about a mosquito and you're sitting behind the chain link fence to keep the mosquito from hitting you, right? It's like it might hit one of the things on the fence and not make it, but the odds aren't in your favor there, right?
Yeah. And I mean, we know with this, I mean, some of the people that initially got this Omicron thing, they had been vaxxed, right?
Yeah.
So it's another example. Once again, it's like people in their mind think that the vaccine, gives them complete immunity, that they will never get this thing. And it's like, no, okay, it's a vaccine. This is not the cure. It's a vaccine, people. Just remember this.
Well, it's not really, the thing about it is it's not really a vaccine because you do a vaccine, like, I don't know about you, but I had the smallpox vaccine when I was 6, 5 or 6 years old, so I can get in school. And I've never done anything about it since, right? I've never done anything about German measles. There was like 3 or 4 we had to take when we were kids. And those are true vaccines. They give you a little bit of the disease and build up the immunity. They're not messing with spike proteins, right? They're not messing with DNA, RNA at all. Okay, they're just replicating that disease, right? And that's not what this is. And this is made the way we make flu vaccines, and the flu shot, which we don't really call a vaccine, we call it a shot. And the reason we call it a shot is that's what it is. And it might work, and it might not. And if it makes you feel better, and you think it helps your numbers, your odds, then by all means. But it's not the kind of thing we would ever force on anybody. About half the people in the country take a flu shot every year, and about half the people don't. And that's fine. And I respect the people who do and the people who don't. But this is like, they have turned this into like a measure of your goodness as a person, right? And they try to say, if you're not doing it, it's because you're selfish. It's like, well, you didn't do it for me. Don't go back and rewrite history here. You did it for you because you were afraid of this disease, right? And so that's why you did it, right? You were more afraid of what of not being vaxxed than being vaxxed. Okay. So miss me with this unselfishness nonsense, right? That's not what this has to do. That's not what it has to do with at all. So, and they don't see results. And, you see, like Mayor de Blasio in New York, instituting, you can't take your kids anywhere unless they are vaxxed, 5 and up or vaxxed, right? And, that has no tie to improving public health. It just doesn't. There's no link to it whatsoever. It's only punitive. It's only government showing you what it can get away with.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I like that point about the shot versus the vaccine, because I mean, look, I've had the shot, I've had the initial shot, the J&J, and my hope there was just that it would lessen the chances that I would get COVID. That's basically all I ever thought about. I have never had a flu shot in my life. Okay, and here I am sitting here at 62 and part of the vulnerable population probably on that. But you mentioned the childhood thing, yeah. So most kids, when they were small, they had younger, they would have smallpox, polio, a TB shot, TB, rubella, those kinds of things. And then everybody should be having a tetanus shot every 10 years or something like that too, especially when you're young. So there's a bunch of these things. And what's the result of of polio and all these other things is that it was pretty much eradicated, right?
People could see the results. Hey, we took it and now we don't have that problem anymore. They don't see that with this keeps going on and on and on. The interventions are not helping.
Right. So as you were saying, the flu shot is basically the best guess estimate, in terms of what the strains will be for the year to try to fight back on that. It is sometimes it works well, sometimes it doesn't work so well. And I think that's, this is the thing with COVID. People have got to realize is that you are getting this shot or shots or whatever, but this is the best guess estimate as to how to stop this thing or slow it down. But it's not a guarantee that it will work. Everybody's physiology is different. I mean, so it may work with me, but it may not work with you.
Right. And the other thing is, on that same point, if all that the COVID shots promise you now is you will have a less severe, you will probably have, they can't say for sure, and you could have side effects and it could, go completely sideways on you. There's 67,000 people, I think, who have died from taking the vaccine. Okay, which is a lot of people for a vaccine to kill, by the way, like the most ever. The adverse reaction profile of this is 800 times worse than any previous vaccine. So it's not close to being like another vaccine. But if you take, if you're taking this, right, all that you can expect out of it is that you have a chance that it won't be, if you get it, it won't be as severe, right? That's what they're saying. There's less chance you'll be hospitalized, okay? in that case, why does it matter to you whether I take it, right? It doesn't really increase, or it doesn't reduce your chances of getting it if I'm vaccinated, right? I mean, we both can get it, right? The argument is it won't be as severe. So there's no reason for anyone to be insisting on anyone else to take this shot. None.
Yeah, and for all those people out there who like to wear these T-shirts like "I've been vaxxed" and stuff like that, thank you for your virtue signaling here. You know, I mean, where it's like where have we ever seen this based on a shot? It's like, people don't go around wearing I've received the flu shot T-shirts or something like that. It's just the way this crazy thing, this world has gone. All right, moving on. So we've got. So this Biden commission on the Supreme Court issued their big long report. I mean, part of the thing there was that I guess they took no opinion of the court packing part of that, but this was a fairly large commission that had a hard time agreeing on much of anything. It seemed
that was a veteran political move by Biden. I mean, he has been in this business a long time, and it's like, okay, I've got demands on my left to do something about the court, right? So I don't really want to do that. I don't really want to walk that dog. So I appoint a commission, put enough Republicans on it so that they won't be able to reach agreement on too much. And then when the report comes out, say, well, they didn't really give me strong recommendations. So, we're going to wait on approaching those issues. And that's exactly what happened. They they had a group of people that they had a hard time reaching agreement. The court packing itself was a particularly contentious part of the debate. And they decided to just say, we don't really, know what the deal is. We don't really have a recommendation to do that. I don't think that you can do that. I think the American people are, they're set on 9 justices. I know that the number's not, it's not sacrosanct in the Constitution. It can be changed. But I think that what happens is anybody who tries to change it is going to be looked at as trying to rig results rather than, an appeal to fairness, right?
Yeah, especially at this stage of where we are. I mean, the way the politics are now is that anybody, Republican or Democrat, trying to change the numbers to favor their side, I mean that will look like a purely political move, and not something that is in the interest of fairness and justice and anything like that at all. And you're right. I mean, in terms of Biden, it probably was a very good, shrewd political move for him to do this because the left has been clamoring for this because they've been very upset about, all the Trump nominees getting on the court, and shifting the balance of power. And they're like, well, the only way we're going to win this battle is that we've got to pack the court with our people. And he did his job. It's like, Biden can easily now say, hey, look, I put a commission together. I put a kind of a nonpartisan commission together. They sat, they deliberated over this for months. And this is what they came up with. What was it, like 238 pages or whatever it was? So it doesn't really come out to anything very conclusive on all of this.
Well, they did have agreement on one thing. They said on term limits for the justices, and I don't know how you would do that. I guess cognitive test, but I'm uncomfortable with how that goes. With any change to it. I think lifetime appointment is the right thing. Bob raised a point earlier I want to bring up. I guess people can see that on the screen. Yes, the courts are starting to come down against the coronavirus mandates. All of the Biden mandates have been stayed or thrown out. People are retreating from even trying to do this stuff. In New York City, in New York, the court is starting to undo the state and local mandates. So, everywhere they try to fight this in court, the people trying to impose mandates are losing.
Yeah, actually, and I saw something this morning. I wasn't looking for this in particular, but it was something else that they had written on Zero Hedge, and one of the things that in this article was just that like these healthcare workers who have been under these mandates in various places, a lot of them are looking at, okay, we are we don't want to abide by this. We're not, we don't want to get a vaccine or whatever. So then they will pick up their sticks basically, and they will move to another state hoping to find a job in their field where it doesn't require them to do that, right? So the overall thing about this article was just this kind of the great migration of how people are moving about. I mean, I think the pandemic, when work from home came up, we saw a lot of this shift where people moved to further out areas, particularly the tech workers that were in Silicon Valley. They moved to other states, neighboring states, even for, whether it was Nevada or Arizona, some went to Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, whatever. And that, a lot of those employers are saying, yeah, we're fine with that. You can work from those areas as long as you get your work done, right? But we're also, I hadn't thought about it from the point of this thing where there's another side of this where people, because of vaccine mandates, which have been pointed out, are now being struck down, thankfully, in a lot of areas, that people are making a decision about, I'm going to quit this job and move to another state that doesn't impose this, or where the private employer mandates not in place, or where the healthcare mandate is not in place, so I can make my choice. Okay, I mean, and I think they should be allowed to do that. I just you may I don't know if you have a next door for your neighborhood, but it encompasses a fairly wide area where I live, and you can slice and dice it by neighborhood. But I noticed this morning there was a message from somebody on the board that they were very upset because they had gone to BGR, right, which is a burger chain, and they had gone to one up in Germantown, and they were just shocked because one of the cooks wasn't wearing a mask, and she says, can I get you extra masks? And the cook's reply was like, no, I don't wear masks. And she was livid. This is in Montgomery County.
Yep.
So he probably was supposed to be wearing a mask because it's Montgomery County. But then again, this is where the employer has got a very tough, they have to kind of little dance here, because there are people who don't want to wear masks. I mean, if you're a fry cook or whatever, you're over a hot, the last thing, do you really want to wear a mask on top of everything else while you've got all this stuff going on?
You can't breathe anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
and the other thing is like I'm in schools a lot coaching, right? And so you get these, they have the only place I really have to wear a mask anymore is when I'm in a school, right? Mm-hmm. They're the only ones who are enforcing it, and they they're not really hard on you about it, but they do. Someone's going to come around eventually and say, you got to wear a mask in here. But, they had these things where you had to check in. Was your temperature fine and all that stuff? That's been dropped. They're back to letting spectators into the games. Last year, all the games we had, we could have in like a scorekeeper and a parent to film, and everybody else had to stay outside. Right. So, now everybody can go to the games, all those lists of who was here, contact list are gone. So, I mean, we've dropped a lot of the protections. It's already gone anyway. Right. But that's where we are. So, you're still going to have to be hashed out.
I was just thinking, it's like I wonder if there's a market for the schools to Zoom rights to their games.
Well, what's happened is National Federation of High Schools has gotten huge on that, and all these schools they have installed these systems, these camera systems in their gyms that do a pretty good job of like following the action back and forth. And so there's no commentary, but like I never get to see my daughter play, but like we came home last night. I had a game, she had a game at the same time, different places, and so we got home last night. We watched her game, together. So. She can tell me all the good stuff. I'm about to do a good thing here, So it's pretty funny.
That's wonderful. So, that goes back to, we've learned a lot of things from the pandemic, in terms of this, that how our lives can change. And there are pieces of our lives that have improved in a sense like that, or some things have been made more convenient as a result of that. Yeah, you can't be in two places at one time. But boy, if you can go back and watch a game like that, where you couldn't because you were coaching another game, that's great. Yeah. I mean,
I can scout now. I can watch my future opponents, right?
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah. So there's a lot of interesting things going on here. So Bob had another comment, which I think is really interesting. Took less than an hour yesterday afternoon for Southern Miss. to have a university-wide email suspending mandatory vaccine data collection process. That's great,
right?
So
they get those rulings and they're starting to respond because they want off that wheel too. They want off the record-keeping responsibility and all the bureaucracy and security things that go into this. They want off that. So if you let them out of it, they'll get out of it in 10 minutes, like he said.
Yeah, and there's just, I think with today, I mean, if you're running any kind of educational institution anyways, like, do you really want to be responsible for collecting this information? Who's storing this information exactly? How securely is it being stored? I mean, are you going to have to spend how much money to make sure that it's basically, hack proof or whatever? And if it gets hacked, can you get sued for that? I mean, there are just so many ramifications of this, where the government is basically saying, you need to collect this data because to show that people are safe. It's like, we were fine without it before. It's like, why are we doing this now? I think it's a higher risk to collect this than to not collect it.
Right. And you're not preventing COVID.
Right.
You're not doing it. It's an endemic disease. You're not preventing it. You're not making it go away.
Right. All right. So while we're talking about a little bit about SCOTUS, we kind of got away from it a little bit. So there's the huge Mississippi case and everything like this. A lot of discussion during oral arguments that have been going back and forth, and it seems that there's been quite a few political comments, or at least something to that extent from Sotomayor and others that about this. And I think, look, it seems like the liberals are very worried that Roe v. Wade will not wind up being overturned as a result of all the oral arguments that they've been hearing in terms of what they've seen so far. I don't know. I'm not a veteran. I don't go and get into the weeds on the court watching and everything like that. But I don't know. I mean, what's your take on this from your observation point?
I love court watching. I don't know how good I am at it, but or anybody else. But what I see is it looks like John Roberts wants to find a third way, sort of throw out the viability concept and say, you still have a right to it, but up to 24 weeks. They can say up to how many weeks, and they can define viability as the public wishes to define viability, right? As its elected representatives, state by state, wish to do so. I'm not optimistic that it'll be overturned. I would love it if it were. If it is going to be, those 5 conservatives all have to stand together for it. That's the only way about it. There's among those 5, or at least 4 Catholics, right? Thomas, Barrett, Alito, and who am I leaving out? But Kavanaugh. Right. So I don't know about Gorsuch, but they all have to stand together to throw it out. If it gets thrown out, it's not the end of abortion in the country, unfortunately, but it is the end of a imagined right to it. And I think that that's healthy for democracy. Let's get in the states, and there's trigger laws in 12 states, one of which is Louisiana, and I think one may even be Virginia. Although I could see Virginia rushing to find a more nuanced approach should this actually happen. Even with a Republican governor and Republican control of the legislature, I'm not sure that it's politically viable to them to keep it completely illegal. But we'll see, right? And it'll be interesting to see where it shakes out. And you're forming different coalitions. The Republicans are a little worried about it blowing up as an election issue, and depriving them of their what could otherwise be a pretty healthy victory for them in 2022. But I don't think so. I don't think that it will cost them. The battles by then will be taken out at the state level. It's not a whole lot of House, U.S. House race. Not a whole lot of U.S. congressmen can do about a Supreme Court ruling.
Right. Yeah. I mean, a year ago or something like that, I would have said, this is going to be a years long process to overturn Roe v. Wade. I agree with you. I mean, I'm still pessimistic that this would actually happen, based on this case. But I think the odds that Roe v. Wade will get overturned with the Supreme Court, makeup as we have it now, is much more likely than I thought it was before. So
there's a shot. You know,
Yeah.
it won't.
No, I mean,
It'll be years before it comes up again once this one is ruled on.
Right, and I do think that's what's going to happen is that, you know, if they don't get the favorable ruling that basically voids Roe v. Wade, there will be another case be prepared to come up in a couple of years or 3 years or whatever, that they're going to, the conservatives, they will be taking their shots with this court, hoping to find the right path and the right argument to actually push it over the finish line. But I mean, if you're a pro-life, supporter, you have to be relatively optimistic about the future in that regard, I think. But once again, you also said the key is that those 5 have got to stick together. That's not a guarantee, but
it's not a guarantee, and Roberts will certainly be against you.
Right. Yeah. Roberts has definitely proven to be a thorn in the side of conservatives.
One more Bush screw up,
Yeah, it's unfortunate. That didn't work out the way that I thought it would have or should have. Moving on to a little more somber note, I think we should take some time here and just talk about Bob Dole passing on here, 98 years old. I know there are a lot of my conservative friends that were not very sad about this and had some nasty comments and things like that. But I mean, Bob Dole in his era, I mean, his time, I mean, he was a great politician. He really tried to. I thought he always tried to bridge the divide and reach over, across the aisle and stuff like that. And it was a politician of a different era, but I have a lot of respect for him and admiration for him.
Yeah, I've always had a lot of respect for him too. I've always thought that I didn't always agree with him,
right.
And I'm probably to his political right, although it encourages me that there was a guy who was injured, almost killed in World War II, right? So it's just a World War II vet who died just recently. And we don't, World War II is barely in lived memory anymore, right? It's almost all the people are dead who were in it. Yeah. And went on to a career of nothing but service and, kindness. And, it's hard. That's a rough business. There's no way around it. When you think about after 1996, the election, he lost to Clinton in the presidential election. Clinton brought him on stage and I think he didn't he appoint him to run a commission on government efficiency or something. Clinton gave him some stuff to do, honored him, treated him well. And because, he was an honorable opponent. He pointed out the political problems. He pointed out the policy problems, and people rejected it, and he accepted, that that's where the country was at that point. And he was a force for bringing people together. He was also one night I was playing golf over at Reston National, over on the other side of Reston, and like one of those summer night, sneaking in 9 before dark deals, and we're coming up 8, and we start hearing, it's like laughter, and we get closer to 9, and you can hear it, you can tell then that like somebody's speaking and then people are laughing. Somebody's making all these people laugh, right? And I'm like, okay, this is like a comedian at the golf course, And I get up there and there's a big tent out on the lawn. And inside the tent is some kind of meeting going on. And Bob Dole is speaking. He's the one cracking everybody up, right? And and I'm telling you, I didn't hear it because I was working my way up the golf course. But this guy was funny for a solid half an hour. He had the crowd rolling. I mean, laughing every few seconds uproariously. So, guy with a good sense of humor. You wish, he was a Trump supporter, which I guess all the the leftists, that was the first thing they wanted to point out. He supported Trump, so, he was able to change with the times and think that like the policy prescriptions of 1980 might not all work in 2021, right? And sort of got to adjust and think like, we may need new tools to solve new problems. He tried, he was a bridge from the future to the past and, as well as kind of across the ideological divide.
Yeah. And as you say, I mean, to the World War II veterans, I mean, how many of them are there? We just had the 80th anniversary of Pearl Harbor yesterday. I mean, I don't even know if how many survivors we still have left from that, because 80 years, we do know that there were some people that I think got into the service when they were teenagers,
16, they lied to get in.
Right, they lied to get in. So there may still be a few of those, but for the most part, most World War II veterans are gone.
They're way up in their 90s. They're very old.
Particularly the ones that were there at the beginning of the war in the early years. So as a result, so we don't see that. We don't get a chance to honor them as much anymore. So I am grateful that he will be lying in state. I think that's a wonderful honor for him. Because of COVID, there will not be any public admittance for any of that, but still a very nice tribute to Bob Dole, and our condolences to the Dole family for a guy who had this different era of politics. It was kind of a forgettable presidential campaign, but I still give him, it's never easy to run for president. Some candidates are just better than others on both sides. And
right. And if he gets in, Jack Kemp is in there in a major policy role.
Yeah.
I mean, that might have a vastly different country right now if that had happened.
Right. Yeah. Who knows? Who knows exactly how that would have worked
Kemp
out.
was ready to shake it up, in a rightward way. So,
there certainly would not have been a Monica Lewinsky along the way. Right.
That's right. These were decent people. And the other thing is, the other thing you said about the 80th anniversary of Pearl Harbor yesterday, almost ignored by the media. Why do you have anything to say about that? Because that was America out fighting for America.
Yeah. No, I mean, I saw less about Pearl Harbor Day yesterday than I had in recent memory. It seems that it's moving down, the list of things, other things, which is unfortunate. I mean, this is, as Roosevelt said, a day which will live in infamy. I mean, people remember that. I mean, look, we weren't born then, but this is for us. We still remember this, right?
And think about this. This is the last time you have some of those guys to talk to about it, right?
Right.
But you go to 90, you're gonna be down to virtually no one alive who was in that war.
Yeah, you will have no more living history from that era at all. Justice Department. You gotta love this Justice Department. You never know which way they're going. But now they want to sue Texas over the redistricting map. Now, I can't say that I'm shocked that the Justice Department wants to sue about this, right? But really, I mean, I still think it goes back to something that you have said time and time again, in general, which is just that, elections have consequences, right? Yeah. So, right. So the Republicans control Texas, so therefore they control the redistricting process. I live in Maryland. The Democrats control Maryland. Maryland, the governor had a bipartisan commission draw a map. The legislature in Maryland is going to totally, they've got a completely different map. Will the Justice Department come in and sue over unfair things there? And no, they're not going to touch the Democrat.
Yeah, and Maryland is the most gerrymandered state in the country.
Yeah, I mean, it's terrible.
It's ridiculous, right? And it's done openly, brazenly for the purpose of ensuring victory for Democrats, right? There's no secondary goal. You ask them why they're setting it up this way. What do they say? So Democrats will win. They don't care if you know that. Right? It's not against the law in Maryland. They put it right in your face. But Texas, first of all, I always want to say at these moments, thank goodness to the turtle for keeping that guy off the Supreme Court, right? Merrick Garland. I mean, we think about that, as like a political stunt, but can you imagine this guy on the Supreme Court, just a rank partisan allows the Department of Justice to be used for rank political purposes repeatedly. Okay. The other thing is they tilted a lot of windmills, right? Legally, like their vax mandates are all going down in flames. Their immigration policy all going down in flames. And of course, they're getting just brutalized by courts because they try to do things that are blatantly illegal, right? And just, challenge people to clean it up later. They're not going to prove that there's any discrimination. Texas, let me tell you something. I think the last 6 times Texas has redistricted, Democrats have sued, right? They sue every time. So it's, you don't like it because you can't win Texas, right? So you're going to fight about this kind of stuff, but they don't have a case, and it's not going to change. Yeah. The leftists all think they do, by the way. You will see, like Larry Tribe and all them think this is a slam dunk for them. But it's not. The Constitution gives wide berth to state legislatures to set this up, and what they decide on is what's going to get decided.
Right. But once again, from the Biden administration's overall viewpoint, it helps to placate the left, right?
Right.
You
That's
take this
exactly
out,
what it is. They don't really
even if
care if they lose,
yeah,
right? It's just hey, we attacked them,
yeah, yeah. We went ahead and did this because we thought it was unfair. So we're trying to uphold this. So yeah, I think anybody looking at this would say this is a real stretch, but it's not something they haven't done before about that. Um,
Amen.
Bob's very active today.
Yeah, he's right. Partisan hack, right?
Yeah, I mean, just like your comment. I mean, the thing is that now we see him in this AG post, and we say, wow, we came
We
that
dodged a
close.
bullet there, man. We really
Yeah,
did.
to having him on the Supreme Court. What would that have been like? Yeah, Ay, it's just amazing. All right, quickly, I just want to get your thoughts about this Office of the Comptroller of the Currency nominee. She's withdrawn, kind of. She was going nowhere. I mean, look, moderate Democrats were opposing her. John Tester. I mean, she was just a crazy woman.
It's about the third time recently that Mark Warner has sort of snuck in on the Republican side of tamping down craziness, right? But you have somebody that says that all bank accounts should be held at the Federal Reserve, and so if the federal government runs out of money, then they can just remove some from your account, to cover their short. That's what she was talking about doing. We're all working for the government. We're all working to provide for the government, and they could just suck out your earnings without any vote. Just, hey, the money's there. It's in our bank, and we just took it, right? I mean, that's what she was proposing. That was one of the things she talked about. She's like, well, this is a radical idea. Okay, we don't want radical ideas in the position of comptroller of the currency, right? We want even keeled, management of the currency, and that's another one of those things like we were just talking about. This person is basically a Soviet, right? She's basically a Soviet Union communist. She grew up in Kazakhstan, was educated in Moscow. She's over here wanting to make our banking system equal to Russia's, essentially. And you appoint her to run the currency. It's like it's a sop to the left. Hey, man, we tried to put your girl in there, and people saw she was a freak and said, no, it's not our fault. We didn't have votes, right? So, but we did something for the far left wing. We placated the far anti-democratic left wing. So, that's kind of a dangerous thing because some of these things you don't notice, right? They get in there and you don't realize that they have these people in there. But this is an absurd appointment, and it's not the first one of the. What if they had like 7 people now? Rejected, prominent appointees rejected just because they were, nuts, basically.
Well, and that's what you get when you're doing the political payback. That's always the risk, is that you're basically trying to, give a sop to the left, and so you line up all these people, but they really don't have the right qualifications. You really didn't vet them or whatever. I mean, she can still go back and teach at Cornell and inculcate the young people with her crazy ideas and stuff like that. But I mean, she was in some documentary that basically was saying, the banking industry people are just a bunch of a-holes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like you actually nominated this person to be the
right. How could you do that?
Yeah, I was like, what in the heck are you
I mean, we expect you to nominate someone who's left of center, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they won, like you say, elections have consequences. Yeah. They won, but somebody who wants to make us the Soviet Union of banking again, make the United States into that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this just goes back to the competency of the Biden administration.
Yeah,
on that.
They're just not competent. They don't get it.
Yeah, I don't understand that at all. All right, so since last week, I think last week we talked about Chris Cuomo being suspended. In very short order, they fired him. And Jeff Zucker said, no severance. Apparently, Chris Cuomo's lost some kind of book deal, but there were stories that he was going to sue them for what's left on his contract and things like that. Maybe he will. Maybe he's got a leg to stand on with the contract. I don't know, and all of this, but they're trying to. CNN is trying to sweep that out and get rid of that. But he was, he was really one of their bona fide stars in terms of he had name recognition, high name recognition at the network and things like that. I mean, I think Michael Smerconish has taken over his slot for right now, but that's it's really kind of messy over at CNN there.
Yeah, and it's like they're down. What have they lost? Half their ratings in the last year, right? I mean, Trump was keeping them afloat, so he was down to what 400,000 or 500,000 people watching his show, which was more than Don Lemon's show, right? So I mean, he was losing clout anyway. And the thing about this is like, they still have not been completely clean about what they're firing him for. What did he do that was out of line? I mean, because he just made a few phone calls. Hey, my brother, if you could, consider his point of view here. I mean, that's tawdry, but that's suspension. That's not fired and no back pay and all that kind of stuff, right? That's a different level of infraction. So there must have been more going on there. There's now, I guess, a loose sexual harassment claim flying around out there that's part of this too against him. He doesn't appear to be like a habitual. He does it every few years, but not every day, right? Like his brother. And he lost his, I guess, Sirius XM show. He's not going to do that anymore either. Right. So, that's a rough few months for the Cuomo brothers, for one thing. And for another, something's going on here that we don't really understand, is what I would say. And, he personally is of little consequence, but something must have been going on in the back room of this network that we don't know about, right? What I have heard is that they are in the process of changing from a commentary station with a few news snippets dropped in to a news station with a very little bit of commentary dropped in. So if that happens, that would be a whole new cast of characters there and a whole new look for CNN. That's what it started out as, was a news network, right? It was all news, and then they would come on. They would have the Crossfire, right? One show, right? Then they had another show, and then so now it's all shows, But I think it's going back the other way because the airport thing and schools are starting to complain and so forth that they need to get reporting, right? Because they're on in schools and so forth.
Yeah. I mean, and this may be in preparation for the fact that the CNN and the whole thing with AT&T and Discovery and all the spinoff that they're going to do, they were going to separate those media assets out of AT&T, and so maybe that whole new look with, I guess, the CNN, and the Discovery network and things like that would create a whole different entity with a different focus. We shall wait, because that's going to take months to kind of get through all the regulatory process and everything like that to be done and whatnot. All right, 2 minutes.
2 minutes. One of the things I wanted to point out to you is that, did you see that Brigham Young has accepted a bid to the Independence Bowls? They'll be playing in Shreveport.
Shreveport, yeah.
They're the highest ranked team who's ever been in the Independence Bowl, which has been around since 1976. It's now one of the oldest bowls, right? Only like the big ones, Cotton, Rose, and all that are older. All the rest of them, and Liberty, I guess, and the rest of them have kind of come and gone. And so it's now one of the oldest bowls. So I don't know what Brigham Young is doing there. I would have think the 13th ranked team in the country could go a little higher. Maybe that'll change some for them when they're about to go into a new conference, and like these conferences have these bids stacked, right? Like they, our 4th place team goes here, our 5th place team goes there. So as long as they're bowl eligible, so you'll get into their system on that. That's one of the ones I wanted to point out to you. In an MLB lockout, they're locked out. The owners have, they didn't reach a contract agreement by the time it ended, I guess, at the end of last month. I don't think that my suspicion is the players will drag their feet on agreeing to anything until most of spring training is over, so they don't have to go to spring training, because I think it's almost universally accepted by the players that spring training is too long. So, the last week or two really grind. They're bored. You've been in the same little condo for 2 months, and your days are kind of routine. You can't really do anything. So, I think that's where all that's headed.
I will. My spring training comment basically is that so Spencer and I had a tentative plan where I would go to spring training at some point in time out in Arizona. Last year, 20, we know what happened last year. Something right. We're thinking like, okay, so we'll plan for for next year, and now this.
Right? Yeah. And I've done that. That's a fun trip.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, so maybe I've got a 25% chance, and then Spencer's actually coming out here in early March for a visit with bringing his wife and his sister-in-law and his mother-in-law and everything like that. They're going to sightsee and do some stuff, but there's under normal circumstances there's still been plenty of time to go visit Arizona and take in a few games and stuff like that, but that's pretty iffy right now because I think, as you said, the players really don't want it. They don't like the long spring training. So yeah, I mean, but they will have to, the owners and the players have got to get together and they do need to get a contract together, somewhere in March, so they can get that season started by the end of March, beginning of April, and not impact the regular season. But let me ask you this though, in terms of how much spring training or how much of this type of preseason should they have so that they are actually in some kind of shape to play starting the regular season, and what does this do if you have no spring training or very little spring training? What is it? How does it affect the ability of the manager to determine what the roster should be? I mean, is it going to be a little right? Is it going to be a little bit of a jumble? It's like, well, we're going with this team, but then all of a sudden it's like, oh, that was the mistake.
Right, and you sort of have to go with what you know. So it's a big edge to veterans, even though they may not be the best suited for the job. So there's a lot of that goes on too.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. Yeah, I mean, it does lessen the chance of some. Somebody kind of coming out of the woodwork just has a phenomenal spring training. All of a sudden you didn't see coming and being able to make the opening day roster. If you don't have a spring training, those people don't get their shot in that sense.
And it's more than that. It's the people that you do expect to be ready to take that step this year. You can't really tell whether they took that step because that's your training ground, your proving ground.
Yep. All right, everyone. Thank you once again for joining us. Thank you, Bob, for all your wonderful comments today. Please always stay safe, stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. God bless America, and we will see you again next week as we move a step closer to Christmas.